Welcome, my name is Dani Walker, and today I'll share with you my 20 favorite evening gowns from the Miss Grand International 2022 preliminary competition. If you like content like this, please consider subscribing and joining me for other episodes. And if you'd like to support the channel in other ways, you can do so by sharing this episode with a friend, hitting that super thanks button, or checking out the merch store. If you're a contestant currently preparing for a competition, I would like to offer some tips and advice to you and some help along the way. So I created a free pageant prep course that's linked in the description below. Let's get right into this episode. Let me clarify, this episode has nothing to do with gown performances. We are only talking about the evening gowns themselves, and I'm going to share with you my favorites in no particular order because there are so many outstanding evening gowns at Miss Grand International. I couldn't even include all of my favorites, and it was difficult to narrow it down to even a top 20. This one might be a surprise for you. I really liked Pakistan's gown. Now, I don't think that this gown is the type that will stand out on the Miss Grand International stage, but just imagine for a moment we take this gown off the stage and we put it on red carpet. We take it to an event. Like, imagine it there. I think that it would really be quite unique, quite show-stopping. Use it for a photo shoot. I mean, it's just stunning. I really like the way that the gloves were attached with these very thin straps, so they kept the shoulders exposed here, and then we just had that really nice transition from the emerald green into the black of the gown. And I like how the gloves were just encrusted, and then of course like that high slit is just super sexy. It looks like this is velvet fabric. It was just really, really beautiful. I don't think that it was the best choice for this pageant, but I do think that this is a beautiful gown. Brazil eventually went on to be crowned as Miss Grand International 2022, and she had a preliminary evening gown and she had a finals evening gown. But today we're talking about prelims, and this is actually the first time that I got to see her prelims gown, and everybody was talking about her before finals, and I just wanted to wait to watch the competition until I got to see finals. But I saw this and oh my gosh, this gown is incredibly unique. First of all, yes, the gold is beautiful, but the red really, really popped. It was such like a unique color combination. It's just not one that we see a lot, especially at international pageants. But the hood and the cape reveal, and then the way that she even held the cape, how she worked it, how she prepared for that really for me enhanced the gown. Like, it really, really showed off the most unique elements of the gown. So I love that. I love that there was a reveal element to this one. Cambodia wore what I would consider to be a very safe evening gown for Miss Grand International, but I really still have to compliment the designer of this gown because of the attention to detail, the quality of the fit here. This is a gown that is just like a no-brainer. If this was given to you as an option to compete for nationals or internationals in a Miss division, this would definitely be a very strong contender. It's beautiful. It almost has like this diamond pattern all over it. I really, really like that high neck and that sheer neckline, that keyhole neckline. It adds sexiness, but when you have that sheer panel over you, it's also gonna add shape to the gown and really keep you held into the gown. So it was a really, really great design choice. Comment gown if you're loving these styles. Ghana wore an incredibly unique gown, and this gown reminded me of the gown that Zozibini Tunzi wore for her Miss Universe farewell in 2020. If this is the same designer and you know, please leave that in the comments. Although it could just be inspired by that gown. Also, Shudu, who ended up competing and representing South Africa at Miss World, she wore a very similar style of gown with that draped beading for a photo shoot prior to Miss World, and I loved that gown. It's really unique because these beads are not beads that are catching light. They're not rhinestones, but really what draws the attention to this style of beading is just the color itself, the vibrancy. And we can see that she obviously drew on some inspiration from her country here with the choice of colors. So this was really beautiful. It was very, very unique, and I liked it a lot. Angola was really giving me Bob Mackie of like the 60s, 70s, 80s. I'm not even sure what decades exactly. I just know Diana Ross, Mitzi Gaynor, I believe, wore quite a few of his pieces. And this really, really long fringe is beautiful. The color is outstanding. We don't see a lot of bright or vivid colors at Grand. We don't see a lot of jewel tones. We usually see a lot of metallics. No hate on the metallics. They do look incredible on stage. But this color was like a blood red. It was really, really beautiful though. And I just love the way that the bodice was created, the flow of the design. It was lovely. Nigeria went with a very uncommon color. She wore pink, and she wore pink in a really unique shade as well. I don't even know what you would really call this. It's almost like a shade darker than a bubblegum type pink, but I really, really liked it. It also really accentuated her waist. Like the way that they used this contouring was almost like reverse contouring. So instead of placing stones where her skin is, they did the opposite, and then they used her skin to contour the body, which is just something that I was like, oh, okay. But it's definitely a striking gown. And for me, I just especially love the color. I'm glad that she was daring with this. Canada wore a gown that I think is something unique to the Miss Grand International stage. The gowns here are just a little bit different. This isn't something that I would imagine on the Miss USA stage or even the Miss Universe stage. This really high double slit, and that center panel on the skirt really gives me like Greek Egyptian vibes. It kind of reminds me of how we imagine or saw togas wrapped or wardrobe on hieroglyphics. And I just thought that it was really, really fun. It was a unique style of dress because of the cut of everything, but oh my gosh, just like the beading on the top, that neckline, the chiffon flowing behind it, just everything about this was beautiful. This is a unique gown though, because I don't think that you get the best views of it when a contestant's walking. I think this is a gown that actually looks really great when you're just standing still, because when you walk, that center panel tends to go between the legs and you lose some of that on stage. But when a contestant is standing still, you can really appreciate the gown in its entirety. Mauritius, at first this almost looked like butterfly appliques, and then we got to see a closer image of her and you could see that these are yellow floral appliques. I thought that this was great. Sometimes we see floral appliques used for younger age divisions. I think that's the most common place to see it, but we don't usually see it for Miss divisions. But I think that these 3D elements on a gown can really add a very unique element to it. It can be very eye-catching, and the shade of yellow was really beautiful. I just like that she was bringing something entirely different to the stage. By the way, if you know anything else about these designers or you want to share about the evening gown selection process for these contestants, feel free to share below in the comments. I'd love to read it, and I'm sure everybody else would as well. Costa Rica's gown was not especially unique, especially if we're talking about the silhouette of this gown. We've seen this done a bunch of times, but I really, really liked the color of it, and the way that it fit her really spoke to the construction quality of this gown. It just like really sucked everything in and made her body look amazing. I don't know who designed this gown, but job well done. This gown the Dominican Republic wore also giving me Bob Mackie vibes, but I could really see this on a red carpet. I feel like this is a gown that many celebrities today would love to wear on a red carpet. Like this gown would really turn heads. I think this could be on a best dressed list for the red carpet, depending on the award show, of course. But this is an incredible style, and I really like that we didn't just see the fringe and the waterfall beading, but we actually got to see a cowl neck created out of it in the center as well. So obviously all that beading added a lot of beautiful movement to it on stage, and because of its color, it was quite bright on stage. Spain, give me a structured shoulder any day. I really love a structured shoulder, especially for petite contestants. In pageantry, it's like a little extra tip for you. If you have a really small frame, and especially even if you're petite and you want to just take up more space on stage, I really like having this small kind of modified structured shoulder. Not something that's going to be overwhelming for your frame, but just something that's going to take up more space on stage. This gown was beautiful. The long fringe pieces that were cascading from the sides, this is definitely worthy of a red carpet. Also just like the bodice, the way that the bust was even held up, I mean, this is definitely giving you that full push-up effect, but you're still able to show like that skin on the side, so we have that cutout illusion. But the construction of this gown was really impressive to me. Guatemala's gown wasn't something that we haven't seen in pageantry before, and I feel like that's the reason that a lot of people might overlook this gown. But I have to take into consideration how this gown actually would have looked in person under the lights. And if you've never been to a pageant in person before, I would really encourage you to go, especially to one of these pageants where the staging is so big and the lights are so bright, because gowns under the lights look so different. When they zoomed in at the end of her walking routine, you could really see that the stones on her gown were very, very similar to diamonds, like emerald cut diamonds. So the shape of the stoning that they used was unique. It wasn't something that we see on very many gowns, and I can just imagine how this would have looked in person. So it easily made my top 20 list, because I feel like this footage is probably not doing it justice, but I would bet that in person, it's incredible. Puerto Rico, wow. So here is another great example of a very sheer evening gown done very, very well. This gown is sheer and it also creates this effect like she's just wearing a bodysuit. But what I like are the cascading rows that are going down her legs. So it's almost like she's wearing a bodysuit and then she has body jewelry on her. So I thought it created a really cool effect. Definitely a gown well suited for Miss Grand International. Lots of skin going on here, but it was really unique and it was beautiful on her. Philippines. This is probably one of my favorite gowns in recent years that they used for Miss Grand International, and I cannot remember what it is reminding me of. I feel like it's reminding me of a luxury handbag or something. I've seen something like this before with the nude crystals and then that black and white kind of snaked detail. I've seen it, I can't place it, but this gown is just so unique, and that's honestly one of the cool things about Grand. Like, you would see a gown like this at Grand, but not really at Miss Universe. But just like look at that corseted bodice, and then also how they have the cutouts on her hips and just like the draping on her hips. I loved this. I feel like this is another gown that many celebrities would love to wear. UK's gown I loved. This reminded me of two gowns. First is Catriana's preliminary gown for Miss Universe, a similar pattern here. And then also there's a Giovanni evening gown style, which maybe this was created by Giovanni, I'm not sure, but there's a Giovanni gown style. And the National American Miss Junior Teen in 2021 won in an orange evening gown at Nationals. Shout out to Noelia. And the bodice of her gown was very similar to this, but the bottom was like a silk taffeta or something like that. But this gown is beautiful. It's like a butterfly on fire, kind of. But I really, really like that they didn't just stick with orange, that we also saw that yellow peeking through. It was just striking. And I also really like that neckline, that structure that they had there. It's just a nice added element, and I think it was perfect with her hair too. It just really brought all the attention up to her face. Curacao. This gown is like a masterclass on sheer gowns. This gown looked so sheer when she walked on stage, and I feel like sheer gowns can be very beautiful. They really can accentuate the body and your shape, and they can look great when the gown is backlit on stage, especially because then you really get to see the contestant's figure, her silhouette. But I think that truly sheer gowns are very difficult to do. It's not always easy to match that sheer fabric to a contestant's skin tone, but this was just done so well. This was a striking gown, and I mean, no wonder she moved on to the semifinals. You really kind of can't ignore her in this piece. Venezuela's gown, I don't think it's incredibly unique. We've seen a very similar style of beading from Sherry Hill around 2016. She did quite a few evening gowns like that. I want to say that Miss Georgia USA in 2014 even had a gown like that, where we saw a similar beading pattern. And, you know, we've seen it before, so that part is not original. What I really liked about this gown, though, in addition to that removable skirt, was the way that they stoned this and beaded this along her sides. So really when she turns to the side, you get this full effect where it elongates her legs because of that stoning and that beading pattern. It goes all the way up, it extends to the top of her hips, and then the beading pattern changes for the bodice. So it was a really cool effect, a very elongating effect, and I think that this was such a great optical illusion. If you have a longer torso and you want that illusion of longer legs, having something like this is definitely going to give you that shape on stage. I was expecting great things from Indonesia because I feel like the Indonesian representatives for Grand International really bring something unique to the stage each year, and this is no exception. So this gown is really, really pretty. We have shades of green in it, but what amazes me about this gown are like the small strips of fabric that were used to create this pattern along the skirt, along the bodice. It's so intricate. And then we have this draped caging all over the top. It's around the front, it's down her arms, it's across her back, which I think was really beautiful. We really didn't get to see enough, I think, of the back details, but this gown is just really, really unique. It looks like it would have taken quite a bit to put this together, and even just imagine a gown like this. So this style really impressed me. Oh my gosh, Panama. So this is one of those gowns, when we look at metallic gowns, I just think pageantry 101. The silhouette is not unique. We've seen it done a bunch of times before, but it's making it into my top 20 because it really, really accentuates her body. This gown style is so wearable, I think, for so many contestants, and honestly at a really wide size range as well, because this gown basically completely encapsulates the body with the exception of your slit. You still get the sexiness, but having these sheer panels is going to really suck everything in. It's going to give you a really amazing shape on stage. And of course, just by creating this gown in silver, it is going to attract attention. It is going to catch a lot of light, which I don't think that we can see from a telecast version, but in person, I assure you, a gown like this would be spectacular. Mexico chose a two-piece gown, and this is something that we see quite often or most regularly at Miss Grand International, but this is such a beautiful gown. And what's so interesting about this one is that she has this additional long gown coat or jacket, however you want to call it, and she initially walks out with it and it's just draped on her arms, and then she loses that part of the dress and she pulls it and she like swings it from around her and out from behind her. And it just really added, I think, to the presentation of this gown. And I like the idea that this dress can be worn both ways. Like you can wear that extra green piece on top of it, or you can just dress this gown down. Also, the way that this gown fit her body, oh my gosh, she's just like fitness goals in this gown. That's it. Those are my favorite top 20 gowns from the preliminary competition at Miss Grand International 2022. If you want to see other episodes like this, I do have some others that are dedicated to my favorite evening gowns over the years of the Miss Universe competition. I think that you'd enjoyed those ones as well. I'll link them right here. But thank you for joining me for this one. I hope that you subscribed and that you'll share this episode with a friend, and of course, come back for lots more. I'll see you next time.